Yo, what's up guys, Del Boy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit the subscribe button, all of that good stuff. I wanted to talk about Dillian Whyte. For the past 18 months, 24 months, maybe more, we've been hearing that Dillian Whyte is the victim of boxing politics. I kind of wanted to get into that. Before I do want to say I do rate Dillian Whyte as a fighter, as a heavyweight. He's certainly in my top 5 heavyweights. And to be honest, in terms of British heavyweight fighters, Dillian Whyte is actually probably my favourite, to be honest. So I do like Dillian Whyte as a fighter and as a person. But I've got to be honest, the whole narrative that this guy's a victim of boxing politics, I think is getting rather out of hand. Where do we even start with this one? We'll start with the non-WBC issues. Dillian Whyte has already had an opportunity to fight for a world title against Anthony Joshua back in April 2019. Wembley Stadium was booked, it was secured by Eddie Hearn, it was booked, and before Anthony Joshua went to America, he was actually supposed to fight in London, in Wembley, in April. And the opponent was supposed to be Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte turned down a career-high payday to fight a unified, unbeaten heavyweight champion, and he turned down a fight in which he could have avenged the only defeat of his career. I keep on hearing that Dillian Whyte has never had a title shot in his career. Well, he had a title shot against Anthony Joshua, and guess what? He turned it down. So that's not strictly true. I keep on hearing people say Dillian Whyte's never had a title shot. He's turned down a title shot for a career-high payday. Let's get that straight. And, also, apart from the Joshua situation, we have the Kubrat Pulev situation. I keep on hearing Eddie Hearn, playing the violin for Dillian Whyte, saying how hard done by he is. But Eddie Hearn never supported Dillian Whyte when it come to the purse bids with Kubrat Pulev. The IBF were going to order Pulev and Dillian Whyte for a final IBF Eliminator. They ordered this fight and Pulev's team outbid Eddie Hearn and they won the purse bid and the fight was going to Bulgaria. As a result, Dillian Whyte pulled out of that final Eliminator because he didn't want to go to Bulgaria because it wasn't financially worth it. Dillian Whyte pulled out of this fight as well. So outside of the WBC, Dillian Whyte has turned down Anthony Joshua for a shot at the unified heavyweight champion, and he also turned down an eliminator against Kubrat Pulev. So these are 2 fights right off the back that Dillian Whyte has turned down, and these would have obviously been great opportunities, particularly the Anthony Joshua fight. Let's go with the WBC. I keep on hearing the WBC are victimizing Dillian Whyte and that they are basically stopping Dillian Whyte getting a title fight. I keep on hearing that Dillian Whyte has been #1 contender for like 900 plus days. Well, first and foremost, being #1 contender in a sanctioning body isn't necessarily the same as being a mandatory challenger. We need to get that out of the way first. And let's be honest, it's not like Dillian Whyte hasn't turned down a final eliminator with the WBC previously. I mean, Maurizio Sullivan, he confirmed that Dillian Whyte turned down an eliminator against Luis Ortiz. The eliminator was ordered in, I want to say, it was after Luis Ortiz lost to Wilder the first time. I think it was spring 2018. And that fight was ordered by the WBC, a final eliminator between Luis Ortiz and Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte and his team, Eddie Hearn, whoever it was, turned down that fight. They didn't want that fight. Hence why Dillian Whyte wasn't considered for a final eliminator for quite some time. After a while, it turned out that Luis Ortiz wasn't ready to fight either, and then the WBC went down to the next available contenders, and they were Dominic Breazeale and Eric Molina. Hence why that fight was a final eliminator. Did the fight suck? Yes. Should Eric Molina be in a final eliminator? No. But we all know how these rankings work. Dillian Whyte brought this on himself by turning down that Eliminator, and effectively, despite him being ranked highly, it pushed him back to the back of a pile. And Maurizio Sulaiman confirmed this also, while turning down that Eliminator isn't going to affect Whyte's ranking. He isn't going to be considered for Eliminators in the near future. Dillian Whyte obviously later on finally got his Eliminator against Oscar Rivas. And by the way, that fight wasn't ordered as a final Eliminator by the WBC. It was Eddie Hearn who petitioned for that fight to be an interim title and essentially a final Eliminator. It was Eddie Hearn who petitioned for that fight to be a final Eliminator. So the WBC never even ordered that fight, and they kowtowed to Eddie Hearn's demands for it to be an interim title fight. So, Dillian Whyte, Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, whoever it may be, they've not played by the WBCs Ball, hence why they've had to wait for a title shot longer. It's that simple, They've tried to navigate the rankings without necessarily taking the fights that the WBC want them to take, So, come on, man. This whole narrative that Dillian Whyte is this victim of boxing politics is complete nonsense. The guy's turned down Kubrat Pulev. He's turned down Anthony Joshua in a unification fight for a career-high payday. And also he's turned down Luis Ortiz in a final Eliminator. So for people out there to say Dillian Whyte doesn't get the opportunities, he's hard done by, it's complete nonsense. I keep on hearing Dillian Whyte will fight anybody, no matter what the circumstances. He's a boogeyman in the heavyweight division. Well, his actions don't really replicate that, to be honest. They really don't. And by the way, again, I'm not saying Dillian Whyte isn't a good fighter. In my opinion, he is. I think he's improved in recent years. He's a good puncher. He's got a beautiful left hook. He's a good body puncher. He's a good fighter in the heavyweight division. And listen, if we're ignoring sanctioning bodies and we're just talking about who's beaten who outside of the champions, then Dillian Whyte deserves a title shot in that sense. He's beaten Robert Helenius, who's obviously gone on to beat Adam Kalnacki. He's beaten Joseph Parker, a former world champion. He's beaten the tough gatekeeper Derek Chisora twice. He's beaten the unheralded but very dangerous Oscar Rivas. Dillian Whyte has put in some good work. I'm not denying that. His resume outside of the champions is pretty impressive. It's one of the best, no doubt about it. But to say that Dillian Whyte hasn't had opportunities and he's been blackballed, etc., it's a complete lie. It's a complete lie propagated by Matchroom, Eddie Hearn, Sky Sports, etc. It's a complete lie. Dillian Whyte has had opportunities. I remember when the Luis Ortiz fight was ordered, and when Dillian Whyte turned that down to fight Joseph Parker, people were cheering it. Oh, Luis Ortiz is old, man. He sucks. He's overrated. He's a bum. These fans were commending that avoiding of Luis Ortiz, and now they're saying Dillian Whyte, he's been hard done by the WBC. Well, you cheered his decision to avoid a final Eliminator, so come on, man. What is this? Either people are willfully lying, or they're just ignorant to what actually happened in this situation, and they're ignorant in regards to Dillian Whyte's career. The fact this guy has turned down multiple fights. He's turned down 3 fights against top 10 fighters in Anthony Joshua, Luis Ortiz, and Kubrat Pulev. He's turned down these fights. He's the one who turned down these fights. And yet we're told that Dillian is the victim of boxing politics. He's played boxing politics himself. Didn't want to go in the lion's den with Kubrat Pulev. He had, overinflated demands against Anthony Joshua, and he didn't want to take the risk against Luis Ortiz when the WBC ordered that fight. Dillian Whyte doesn't want to play by the sanctioning body rules, and he's not got a title shot. It's that simple. It seems like Dillian and Eddie Hearn want everything on their terms. They're trying to dictate to the WBC in what they should do, and they did that with the Oscar Rivas situation, because they petitioned for that fight to be an interim title, and the WBC obliged that. So listen, man, it is what it is. Dillian's a good fighter. He's got a good resume outside of the champions, no doubt about it. If he fought for a world title next, I would say he deserves it. But I think people are being a little dishonest when they say Dillian Whyte is this guy who would fight anybody, anywhere, anytime, when his track record proves that that isn't the case. I'm just sick and tired of the nonsense. I'm sick and tired of the lies with Dillian Whyte. It's getting a little bit too much. I've had enough of it. It's been what? God knows how many months, how many years now? It's been crazy. It's been crazy. But that's just my opinion. You know, that's just my opinion. I'm sure the Matchroom fangirls out there are going to get in their feelings. It is what it is. You know, at the end of the day, you know, I just want to see the best fights. You know, I want to see Dillian in there with the best fighters in the world. I like the Povetkin fight coming up. I think that's a great fight. I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely. Excellent fight. But, you know, Dillian's got to wait his turn now. It's that simple. You know, Joshua's fighting Pulev. Fury's fighting Wilder again. Dillian's mandatory is due in February 2021, so I'm not sure why he's crying now, because it's not due yet. And let's say Tyson Fury and Wilder get their fight on this year somehow, back end of the year, they get that third fight sorted, then listen, yeah, after that Dillian can get his shot, but even then, for WBC, you know, they prioritise like unification, undisputed fights. So even after the conclusion of Wilder Fury 3, potentially Dillian Whyte won't even get his shot after that fight, because if those guys go straight into an undisputed fight with Joshua, Dillian's got to wait further. And at the end of the day, nobody's to blame for that but Dillian and Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, as far as I'm concerned. That's just my opinion. Share your thoughts below. Peace.